Welcome everyone to another Workshop Wednesday Live. Bull by the horns today, nothing planned, so I hope this build is going to go well. Don't know what we're going to come across. We've got a lovely set of Titleist blades to build today with some Project X LZ shafts. So, what I have learnt from my first YouTube Live is I blink a lot, and I tend to look like I'm talking like Elvis Presley, so without further ado, let's get on with it. Oh, right, okay. Here we go. So, the customer's build spec today is Titleist 620MB's 4/2 pitch. What I'm going to do is I'm playing drums as well today, so please. Give this camera angle here. Again, so we're just using an emery belt, linishing approximately 1.25 inches from the tip up the shaft. Switch back to cut this 6-iron now. So I've got YouTube Live running in the background. If you have any, I think we do have a slight audio issue. Let's have a look. Okay, it looks okay. Send Nick if the audio is still okay. Okay, mic doesn't work when you're swapping down the line cameras. Okay, so for today, guys, I'm just going to switch to the rear camera. Yeah, thanks, guys. Yeah, today's going to be the rear camera. Apologies, I said this was live. I'm mixing it on myself, so I thought it was going to be too good to be true to not have any issues. Right, let's crack on. Cutting to 37.5 inches. Safety first, do need goggles. There we go. Just deburring the tip of the butt of the shaft. Squaring the end of the butt up. Okay. Now, because everything else is already done, I'm going to switch to the curing machine. Do excuse me whilst I zoom out so you can see what I'm doing. I did have a fantastic view for the curing machine, which I will show you. So we'll have to make do with this for today. Start the curing process, loading the shaft into the SST curing machine. Here we go. The first part of the test is we rotate the shaft into its logo up position. This is so we can carry out a control test to compare the cured results to. The next part of the test is we enter the customer's name. It's about the only thing I didn't check. He who shall remain nameless today. Eventually, when we start streaming in 4K, you'll probably be able to zoom in and see the customer's name, so I don't know if that hopefully doesn't breach GDPR. Okay, shaft make is Project X. Loading zone. Mike, we're on air. We're on air at the moment. That's all right. Do you want to tell the audience a joke? Do you want to tell a joke? No. Steel shaft flex is 6.0. Head make is tight list. And we're selecting the 6-arm shaft. So I'll step aside a bit so hopefully you can see what's happening. Again, apologies that the audio and the remote cameras isn't synced up. I think I know a way around that, but I'll have to do that offline. The tip of the shaft is being deflected under a load cell to measure the change in force exerted up against this arm here. That draws a pattern of load versus chuck orientation. If the shaft was perfectly round and straight, let me just lock this door. Come on in. If the shaft was perfectly round and straight, we'd see a flat line here. As you can see, it's not. So we have a point here where the shaft is pushing up the most against the load cell arm, and a point where is the least resistance against the load cell. Moving on to the next part of the test is to attach a tip mass. This simulates the 6-iron head weight, or rather an iron head weight. And the first part of the test is it's going to agitate the shaft in the logo up position. There are some lasers here which is tracking the pattern of motion, and you'll see that generally speaking the pattern of motion is more tight than you would see with graphite. Once it's tested in the most stable orientation, it'll move to the high point on that graph and start testing there, and then moving either side in smaller increments until we get this vertical deviation or this squeeze down to an amount which means the shaft is deemed pured and in its correct playing orientation. Can take anything between, I would say, 30 seconds and 3 minutes to pure each shaft. Again, for the purpose of this video, we have already pre-pured the shafts. Otherwise, the last thing you want is to watch the back of my head for half an hour. So the graphs start, the concentric circles starting to squeeze ever so slightly now. Out of plane oscillations moving to 0.688 of an inch. I believe that is half an inch either side of the midpoint. I did forget to mark that. I put some tape on the shaft, so I'm just going to tell the machine that it didn't mark correctly, and it'll redo the marking process. Let's just make sure that's definite. Cool. Right, the shaft did mark correctly. In this particular shaft, we can see that the final analysis shows the shaft was rotated 154 degrees from its logo up position, resulting in an improvement in out-of-plane oscillations by 16.21%. A marginal improvement. The shaft graphics have flipped through from on top to underneath. There's no one shaft that needs puring, but every shaft benefits from being pured. Okay, now we can remove the tip mass, hit next, and it'll just release the shaft from the chuck. The chuck isn't a constant pressure, it holds it very much like a golfer's grip, so instead of a constant load, greater pressure towards the rear and the front of the grip to mimic a golfer's grip as much as possible. Right, moving back over to No questions? I'm assuming that's all good, or you've all switched off. Okay, moving to the build again now. Let me see if I can zoom in and give you a slightly better view on the workbench. Please bear with me for one moment. Sorry, Nuno, got the top of your head there. Right. There we go. So before I assemble the shafts, I just make sure that all the step pattern is correct. There's because we have had situations where shafts have been labelled up incorrectly. Ultimately, some shafts do have labels installed by humans. We can make mistakes. Silk screen can go on the wrong shaft, so I just double check to make sure the steps are lined up correctly. Most importantly, there isn't a rogue flex in there. They are all 6/0s, which is good. The shafts have all been abraded consistently. We can now go on to the assembly. So we use a 3M structural adhesive. I believe it has other uses in the aerospace and F1 industry for bonding titanium and graphite together. It's exceptionally strong. As I mentioned in a previous video, that traditionally club makers have always said use the longest setting epoxy you can. No longer the case. This stuff is exceptionally strong. I believe it's stronger than most epoxies. One of the benefits of being adhesive is it's not brittle. With epoxies, especially fast-setting epoxies, you can, when you mix these two-part epoxies up, you can get micro bubbles that never escape the epoxy. So when it comes to assembling larger-headed clubs, in particular a driver 460cc with a big heel-to-toe measurement, when you get torsional forces or twist on the shaft, those little bubbles can create a creak. And what happens is that because the creak is stemming from inside the hosel, you get an amplification all the way up the shaft. So if you've ever had a shaft that clicks, if you twist the head, it can feel like the click is literally all the way up the middle of the shaft. That's not the case. It's just emanating from the hosel, and it's amplifying up the shaft just like a trumpet or a musical instrument. Right, we're going to mix a little bit. And then add some alignment beads. This just ensures that the shafts are centered in the hosels as much as possible. This build is going to be done in conjunction with the Titleist Ferrule. The Titleist Ferrules do have a little shoulder on them, which helps centralize the shaft into the hosel. You can imagine if the shafts were slightly loose and there was nothing supporting them, and you put the shafts to dry, you could very much find that they might set toe down, which once assembled is going to result in a very upright lie and could affect loft and lie as well. Another bit more of a mix. How am I doing, guys? Is the audio still okay? There's 8 of you watching, so hopefully I'm doing something right. If you've got any questions, please do fire away. We will always answer questions offline as well. Starting with the forearm. Just rolling the tip of the shaft in the epoxy, rather adhesive. And actually, no, with these ones slightly different, what I'm going to do is, and again, every build is different. There's not one particular way to assemble a set. The principles are the same, but depending on the components you're using, you develop just slightly different techniques. I'm going to pop the that's quite loose, so now I'm going to go revert to the original way. So always adapting. That's every day as a club builder you learn something different, constantly learning. Just going to drive the ferrule onto the shaft and then release the head, which exposes the tip prepped area. I can then take a very small amount of adhesive, drop it into the hosel, ensuring that the hosel is coated evenly on the inside. The excess I'm going to use on the tip of the shaft. The key is using enough but not too much. Inserting the shaft into the hosel, aligning the shaft with the pure mark in the 12 o'clock position, square with the leading edge and the middle of the shaft. And any excess adhesive I'm just going to wipe off with a tissue. Just check that alignment once more. Give it a little tap so it's seated at the bottom of the hosel. Right, I'm going to have to work quickly to get these assembled because this DP8 ton does go off very quickly, more so in a warmer climate than winter time. Guys, if you're new to this channel, if you wouldn't mind subscribing, liking and hitting the bell icon so you can see when we're doing more lives. We've got some great content planned. Friday's going to be our resident director of golf, Stuart Cartwright. Tune in, give him a ribbing. He loves being put on the spot. Okay, 5-iron done. A lot of you are probably thinking, well, why hasn't he used tip weights? Well, we actually assemble a different way, which we'll come on to, so stay tuned and we'll show you how we do that. There are many schools of thought on weighting clubs, but in our opinion, until the club is assembled, until you weigh the grip, you really don't know how much weight you need to add. Fit for purpose golf. How are you doing, buddy? Hope you're well. DP810 green we use. Every now and again it comes in a slightly different shade. We've seen it a lot more yellowy brown, but it is great stuff. Only downside is you do pay a price for it because it is not cheap at about £16 net of VAT for a 48.5 mil cartridge, which will probably do two sets of irons. Yeah. About 2 sets of irons, full sets. So about 15 clubs. Again, if you're just tuning in, my apologies because I'd set up 2 other views to give you a really good look at what I'm doing, but you very kindly point me out and put me out of my misery that the audio was not working when I switched to those 2 cameras. There you go, live TV. So this is the 7-iron. Just a little attention to details when you're assembling clubs, making sure that all the adhesive is gone, because the number of times we've seen clubs come in where they haven't been cleaned whilst the adhesive setting or epoxy setting, and once it's set, it's an absolute pain to get off. Some just don't bother, and it's a shame because assembling clubs is a craft, it's an art, and it really should be something club builders should be proud of. This is why we rigorously QC our clubs before they leave the premises. Looking for fine dings, nicks, smears on the shafts from acetone. Okay, so I've got to work quickly to get this 9 and wedge. Eight-iron done. I'm not going to get it done. I'm not going to risk it. Let me take that ferrule off. Just going to mix up some more. I think you'll see how quickly that's actually gone off. It is remarkable stuff, and it's an adhesive they use on tour for fast builds and fast repairs. You can literally, by the time the grip is dried, the club is capable of being hit. So if you were air blowing a grip on, I reckon from assembly to hitting could potentially be 15 minutes. 15 minutes, you're going to be at about 80% of the shear strength of the adhesive, which is far more than you need to resist the forces of torque on the head on the shaft. Goes without saying, guys, if you ever want to tinker at home with re-gripping clubs or even changing shafts, and you want any guidance or advice, do drop us a line. If we've experienced a problem, we'll have seen it over the last 20 years, and we'll know how to overcome it or prevent you from making any mistakes that I would have made when I first started club building about 25 years ago. Nearly 45, if you're wondering. God, nearly the wrong side of it. Okay, I'm just going to separate the 9-iron from the wedge and wedge from the rest of the set, just in case I forget which batch I've used in my old age. And Nick, building to FM can be very difficult when you're limited with the sets you got. This is actually a set we're assembling for the customer. He supplied the shaft and the grips. So I guess in an ideal world, if you had a full inventory of shafts, the Nirvana build, which I believe Jack Nicklaus had the luxury of being able to do, was to take 15, 20 3-iron shafts, weigh them all, FM frequency them all, discard all the ones that don't match the FM graph, and work throughout the set. That way you could create a set of perfectly frequencied shafts, all within a suitable weight range. There are instances when you don't have that luxury, such as this, where the customer supplied the shafts. There are little things you can do. So for instance, these grips, we go the extra mile to ensure that the finished swing weight is spot on. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to assign these grips to a specific club. I'm going to weigh them first. I'm going to put the lightest shaft towards the 4-iron and the heaviest towards the wedge, because we progressively swing weight irons from the long irons to the short irons. It's kind of along the same lines as MOI matching, but in our opinion, the fundamental the method for determining somebody's correct MOI is to take somebody's favourite club in the bag and to measure the MOI of that. Now, why is it the favourite club in the bag? Is it because the shaft happens to be at the right frequency? Is it because the dead weight or total weight is correct compared to all the others? Is it because the swing weight of the club is correct? Is it because the lie angle is correct? There are so many other factors that would determine why that club is favourite. Is it because the shaft happens to be more neutrally aligned than any other shafts in the bag? Who knows? But what we do know and have done from testing is that golfers react all the same way, regardless of feel. If if swing weight is not progressed into the shorter irons, you start to lose the feel. Now, some manufacturers have a constant swing weight throughout the set. Some manufacturers gradually increase, which is recognition of the fact that swing weight does need to progress throughout the set. Some manufacturers have a constant swing weight in their irons, and then their wedges go from D2, D3, D4, D5 as the wedges get shorter. We've got the ability to build to 0.2 or 0.3 of a swing weight, so we determine the optimal swing weight for the 6-iron, and from many, many years of testing, we know how swing weight should progress, and in the increments it should progress from the long irons to the short irons. Now, if you were to take that principle with using tip weights, I mean, tip weights come in a variety of sizes, but mainly integers, so like 1 gram, 2 gram, 3 gram, 5 gram, 7 gram, 10 grams. The only way to hit those fractions is to start trimming them and then dry assembling. But then you've got the assembly. You can get very, very close to adding the same amount of adhesive with every club you build. But there are going to be different amounts. Now, 0.4 of a gram could be the difference between a club finishing swing weight at D0 and D0.2. So what we do is we swing it afterwards using lead powder. A lot of people don't like it, but there is a method that we use that has resulted in a far more accurate way of assembling and ensuring that you don't get lead running up and down the shafts. And when you compact it, the lead actually turns itself into a little tip weight. It solidifies because it's such a soft metal. That way you get no vibration when you bounce the club on the floor. Okay, by the time we've got to the 9 and wedge, those will be good to go. How are we doing for time? 27 minutes. I think we've got to get going. Right, so I'm going to weigh all these grips. There's 7 grips here. 52.2 grams. 54.3 grams, so that's going to go towards the bottom end. 55.6 grams. 50.6 grams. So we've already got a 5 gram difference between the lightest and the heaviest grip, where if you didn't care which grip went on which club, you could end up throwing swing weight out by 1 full point. Remember, it's 5 grams in the butt of the club affects swing weight by 1 point, approximately 2 grams in the head. So that was a light one. We are indeed going to use corks, yes, but with a little other step to make sure that they don't dislodge through constant vibration. So we've assigned this grip to the forearm. This particular build is 3 layers of tape. For 3 layers of tape, I'm going to use half a swing weight point as extra grip weight, which is 1 gram. So by placing the club on the scale, we have got D3.3. Gripping it with 3 layers is going to drop it down to about D2.8, D2.7. For this build, that club is absolutely fine. I'm just going to check. If I put the heaviest grip on, so this was the lightest, this was the heaviest, that's dropped to D2. Looking at this build, I'm going to mix things up a bit because I'd like that forearm to be a little bit lighter. So I'm actually going to put this lighter grip down the bottom end of the club, bottom end of the set where I know swing weight isn't going to be an issue. So I'm using grip weight to my advantage here to control swing weight, so we have to add as little weight as possible. Okay, D2.1. I'm just going to run through the set quickly just to make sure there are no other anomalies. So this is the 4-iron grip. This is the 5-iron grip, because it's the only way to remove weight once the club is assembled is to fully rebuild. That's fine. So once I've run through these clubs here, I'll show you how we're going to weights to set up. No swing weight issues at all. If you were ever worried about assembling a set of clubs and hitting swing weight, so we are at 7 on D4, yeah, that's fine. Always dry assemble first. That way you can avoid any issues of having to pull apart, remove any tip weights or tungsten tip weights that sometimes come already installed in club heads. Fortunately, we're a component account with every manufacturer, so we are only ever adding weight. Okay, so that is a little heavy. I'm going to pop. Perfect. And finally, the pitching wedge. Again, this level of detail you just wouldn't get from a manufacturer, because they literally have to hit a certain number of clubs built per hour. Right, so we can now start to add internal weight. Just to show you how precise swing weight can be, and if you're 0.2 or 0.3 swing weight points away from optimal swing weight, you will affect performance even if you can't feel it. I've left the poly bags, just the protective cover on the iron heads. Just on this one, we normally leave them on, and we know how much they weigh, so we know how much to allow for. We leave them on to protect the faces because, especially some of the finishes that are kind of matte, such as the ping irons, if there's any metal-to-metal contact, you'll get this kind of snail trail along the faces, something that we want to avoid at all costs. Okay, yes, after the first round, the heads are going to be covered in them, but when clubs leave our workshop, we want them to be absolutely immaculate. So this is currently D2. If I was to take the little plastic bag off, it's probably going to drop to about D1.8. Which it has. I know you can't see it, but D1.8. So that little amount there could be the difference between the club performing and timing correctly or just not quite feeling right. So I'm also going to make an allowance for 0.2 of a swing weight in the rest of the set, and also the 3 layers of tape going under the grip. So this is now D1.8. The target swing weight is D2. So I'm going to increase that to... I've taken the poly bag off. That's getting up to D2.5. So I'm using, we're talking very, very small amounts of lead powder here. If you're imagining that because we've used a minimal amount of adhesive, there's probably an inch of cavity inside the shaft, inside the hosel, and the amount of lead tape we're using is probably travelling up the shaft by, I would say, 1/4 of an inch max, but that's only going to get compressed more when we use the pounding rod. Just a little bit more. In instances where you're several swing weight points away from the target swing weight, you've got to question whether or not you're using the correct head weights, because many manufacturers will use weight cartridges to hit certain swing weights at certain lengths with certain shaft weights and grip weights. Ping used one in the toe. In the past, you've seen TaylorMade have used a badge at the back. Contrary to belief, the PXG weights are the only two that dictate head weight. I believe are the last two in the toe. Those can be used to increase and decrease swing weight, but only by PXG or component accounts who have the ability to do so. Again, everything is double checking because you only get one chance at this. D2.5. Okay, and I am just going to write down, let's grab my marker. 4 on that. The most important thing, I tell you what, I told you I was getting old. So, weight is in place. We now need to use the rod, literally just to solidify that lead. The next step is to use a very, very small cork. We've had the exact dimensions that we require made by a manufacturing company, and we use a little bit of super glue, crazy glue, cyanoacrylate, down the side of the cork, and slowly compress the cork down and hold it in place just for a couple of seconds until we get the adhesion from the super glue. Moving on to the 5-iron. Target swing weight is D2.2. We're at D2.2. We've got the cellophane on the head. We've got the 3 layers of tape. I'm going to take that up to D2.9 because when the 0.2 comes off the head, that'll be 2.7. And with the 3 layers of tape in the other end, that'll drop it down to D2.2. See, these are just the extra steps we can go to ensure we call it a precision build because that's exactly what it is. Again, I'm just adding very, very, very tiny amounts. A little bit too much. Again, this is the perfect time to remove it if there's too much. D2.9. Mark the 5 up. You'll probably have noticed that I didn't pound that one. I ended up using such a small amount. The compression of the cork on the lead tape would have been sufficient. But yes, I forgot. 1.9. 1.9 target swing weight D2.5. I want to take that up 0.7 of a point to D3.2 from D1.9 with the assigned grip. Too much. D3.2. So I've added about approximately 2 grams of lead powder here, which is probably, again, a quarter, 3/8 of an inch inside the hosel from the bottom of the hosel and shaft. 7 iron, target swing weight D2.8. We have D2.5. I need to take that up to D3.5. So there's a swing weight. So this is going to be approximately 2 grams again. Again, it's just such small amounts. It's very easy to add too much. D3.5. If you're just tuning in, guys, thank you very much for doing so. We're just assembling a set of Titleist 620 MBs for a customer with his shafts and grips. Three more to go, 8 iron through pitching wedge. And I'm assigning a grip to an iron because manufacturers state a weight tolerance of approximately 3.5 grams per grip, which means that you could have 2 grips within a set 7 grams apart. 5 grams of grip weight is a swing weight point, so you could have a set of irons that were perfectly swing weighted, and if you don't take grip weight into consideration, you could completely throw them off balance by not weight sorting the grips or just making sure there are no rogue grips. Fortunately, we do carry quite a lot of grips, so any ones that are completely off the chart, we would discard. D2.2 for the 8 iron, target swing weight is D3 exactly. That needs to go up to D3.5. That's D3.4. 0.1 of a swing weight is literally a pinch. Okay. So rest assured, I will do my best to get all the audio set up correctly when we switch scenes next week. You think you covered all bases and then it all goes wrong, but nothing like ad-libbing. Oh, I couldn't do it for a career. This is the 9 iron. Okay, so the 9 iron target swing is D3.2. We have D3.9. No weight being added. Honestly, it's a dream build when head weights come in. And the reason why swing weight is up and down is for a variety of reasons. It's because there are tolerances in shaft weight, there are tolerances in head weight, and all these tolerances create different balance points. And again, swing weight is balance. Swing weight is the heft of the club. It is the only way you can bring out the natural timing of a club. You have to get it right because the correct head and shaft built to the wrong swing weight will not work. So if your fitter or pro completely overlooks swing weight or doesn't even think that it's important, I would seek a second opinion because it's the difference between clubs working and not working. It's more than the icing on the cake. It has to be a very, very serious factor. Pitching wedge is the last club, D2.1, which I use the heaviest grip for, or one of the heaviest grips. We need a target swing weight of D3.5. The reason why there's a bit more of a jump here is because We've chosen to go a full ½ inch between the 9 iron and the pitching wedge because of the number of wedges the customer is carrying. I believe it's 1 wedge rather than 2 wedges. Had it been 2 wedges, we may have gone 1/4 inch from the 9 iron to the pitching wedge to allow a nicer 1/4 inch progression in wedge length across his 3 wedges. So we're adding a little bit more weight here. Again, as Paul Daniels would say, no, honestly, I can't do that. Uh, 3.5, we need 4.2. There are some club makers in the past. I know that some club making organisations used to use lead down the shaft in graphite shafts. Big no-no. That is a definite no-no. Now I got worried there because I saw one cork left and I thought, oh my God, have I not corked one of the clubs? But of course the 9 iron didn't need any weight, so that can go back in the pot. Okay. Tag that pitching wedge. Right, let me switch the camera angle to try and see as much of the grip station as possible. Again, apologies, I had this technical error, but you know, it's one of those things. Okay. I'm going to turn the gain down on the mic as well. I think I've been shouting. 3 layers of tape. Let me just move the grips over here. I'm going to take the clubs one by one. I generally hope these lives become easier because it's quite an intimidating thing to do, but I guess I can't see anyone. Nobody's here, nobody's watching, and it's just like me talking to myself, which I know lots of my colleagues do, and I think they're absolutely bonkers. So I just let them get on with it. Right. Okay, so 3 layers of tape. Again, because the grip length is constant, I can tape them all up and then just install the grips afterwards. So I'm putting the top of the shaft to the first line on the grip, and I'm also putting my thumb on the white lines at the bottom. That's how I know how much tape to install. You never want to put on too much tape or too little tape. Too much tape, the only way you can realistically take it off is to redo it. The absolute cardinal sin is for when clubs are gripped to use a Stanley blade and do that, because essentially you're scoring the shaft like a tile cutter, especially graphite. You strike the ground, that club will snap at that weak point there. So never, ever, ever trim grip tape with a Stanley blade. So we're going 3 layers of tape. Now, 3 layers is the grip size. It varies depending on the shaft that it's going onto, because all shafts have different playing characteristics. The way they achieve those different playing characteristics is through different bend profiles. You create different bend profiles through different shaft diameters and thicknesses. The shafts taper from a certain diameter more quickly than others. So we're looking at the way the grip tape overlaps. I know you can't see it, but this particular shaft has quite a constant taper. To achieve a standard grip size, you do want a little taper. So we're going to create a false taper by putting an extra layer in the top hand. So whilst the grip size was only 3 layers, I'm only installing 2 top, 1 bottom, because this is, I believe this is a 600 butt diameter shaft, and it's quite a non-taper butt section of this shaft. So the only other thing to consider when building a set of clubs is what the finished lie angle is. If you are building a set that's 3 degrees, 4 degrees flat, and you make those lie angle adjustments after the clubs are built, you're going to affect two things. Two things or three things? Two things. The two things that you're going to affect is the length. If the toe has moved away from the shaft in the downward plane, you're making that club longer. 4 degrees for every 1/4 inch in length. I did check before the build that this was a standard lie angle or there or thereabouts. If we had to move these flat, we would have moved the heads before the build, because by moving them afterwards you'd make them 1/4 inch longer, and of course that's going to make them heavier in swing weight because the club is longer. So you've got to look at the full build before you go into assembling the clubs. How are we doing this time? I may just do this, finish the 6 iron. We've got 9 minutes until the hour is up. I always remember when I sat a club making qualification about 20 years ago, there was what 5 factors affect swing weight. And it was always the 5th one I couldn't work out. So it was grip weight, shaft weight, club length, head weight, and of course the 5th one was lie angle. Right, okay, for the purpose of this live, I'm just going to grip the 6 iron, 4, 5, 6, and then finish the rest of the set offline. Okay, never over clamp a shaft, but you can damage it, especially if it's graphite. The last thing you want to hear is a crack as you tighten the vise up. So just enough amount of force to hold the shaft as you grip it. Of course, making sure that the rubber parts are clean at all times to create a better gripping environment. Finger on the bottom of the grip. There's a little hole that's there to let air out. If you don't put your finger on it, it also lets grip solution out all over you. Okay, give it a shake, pour the solution onto the tape. I always go past the tape by about 1/4 inch and then pull it back. That way, you know you've got a consistent grip length throughout the set. Excess grip solution from the bottom and the top, making sure that there's no visible grip tape, which there isn't. You've got a little time to now square the grip. So let me take the cellophane off here. There's not sufficient amount of weight in that for us to factor it into the build. I mean, even if you remove that post gripping, it wouldn't change swing weight at all, because you need more weight in the butt end of the club to affect swing weight. Or less, more or less. Yeah. So we're lining the notch at the top of the grip with the notch, white notch at the bottom of the grip, ensuring that the midline, or the central line of the shaft, runs all the way through the logo, all the way through the textured pattern, up to the top. And this is done with a square face, not with a resting face on the floor. Okay, so this iron is now ready to have the ferrule finished. It's a shame I can't really show you how to turn ferrules too well, but essentially you're using a felt belt to work off plastic. The reason why it's a felt belt is because it doesn't damage hosels, and you're kind of getting to a point where it's not burning it. If you kept it in one place, you would burn it, you would melt the ferrule. This is literally just shaving plastic off until the ferrule is the same diameter as the hosel. And you work the club heads anti-clockwise against a rotating belt, very slowly and smoothly, trying to maintain a constant pressure at all times. Okay, ferrule is turned. The next is to polish the ferrule. Just take a little bit of paper cloth, fold it in 4. Come a little bit closer to the camera. Acetone is all we use, and let's see where you can see. Here. We hold the acetone pad against the ferrule, rotate the head a couple of times, which basically melts the plastic to leave a mirror shine. And that is done. So from here, all the clubs would be finished, taken through into our QC shop, where the loft and lie angles will be checked against the customer's file. On collection of equipment, we do always carry out a dynamic check, which is not essential, but it's nice for the customers to have more of a formal handover. When the fitters fit for lie angle, they're pretty spot on with their recommendations. It's to within half a degree. Now, if you think that we're conducting the lie angle check in a completely still and flat environment, where the ball is on the same level as your feet, you rarely get those conditions on a... Oh, crikey, I do apologise, I'm off the camera. You rarely get those conditions on a golf course. So the chances are that they will be as near as damn it. Loft you will have already discussed with your fitter. However, if somebody wants to collect their irons and return at a later stage to do a gapping or to double check the lie angle, then obviously they're completely welcome to do so. So loft and lie angle will be adjusted. A manufacturer's shaft label will be installed. Obviously the Project XLZ has a silk-screened logo, hence the reason why the shafts are being rotated. They may appear installed in a random fashion. In the instance where there is no silk-screened label, we install one on the back of the shaft along with our co-branded SST Pure and Precision Golf label. And I think, guys, that is pretty much it, and we are at nearly spot on an hour. I can only apologise for the technical hitches. It was my intention to have both cameras working and the audio working in each scene. In retrospect, I know why that was. We'll sort it. I hope you enjoyed today. Please do subscribe, like, and hit the bell icon to be notified of other workshop lives. We've got so much stuff in the pipeline to do. All areas of fitting, building, fitness, coaching, biomechanics, we want to bring to you so you can watch at home to see why we're truly quite a unique facility in Europe. We can help golfers of all abilities improve their game under one roof. Generally speaking these days, leaving with equipment is one of the last things people do, as there are often other things that we can bring to their game that can promote faster game improvements, the last thing you want to do is spend unnecessarily in the first instance. We want to get you playing better golf, get better golf as quickly as possible. And if it's clubs that you leave last with, then so be it. So guys, thanks for today. I'm going to try and hit the off button now, and we'll see you next time.